My best friend's failure made my day after years of her flaunting her perfect life, while I struggled. Whitney and I had been best friends since 7th grade. We did everything together until senior year, when she got accepted to State University on a full academic scholarship. I ended up at community college working night shifts at a diner just to afford books. For 4 years, I watched her post pictures from football games, sorority events, spring break trips to Miami. I was scraping grease off plates at midnight and studying in my car between shifts because our apartment was too loud. She would call me sometimes to complain about her boyfriend Austin not texting back fast enough or her roommate leaving dishes in the sink. I would sit there in my work uniform that smelled like fries and listen. Every Thanksgiving when we both came home, she would show up in new clothes and talk about her internship at some law firm or the study abroad program she got picked for. I would nod and smile while wearing the same jacket from high school because I couldn't afford a new one. My boyfriend Greg broke up with me sophomore year because he said I worked too much and we never had fun anymore. 2 months later, I saw on Instagram he was dating a girl from his college who had time to actually go out. Whitney posted about Austin constantly. Pictures of them at restaurants I couldn't afford, concerts I didn't have time for, weekend trips to the mountains. She would text me saying how lucky she was to find someone so perfect who actually had goals and ambition. I stopped responding as much. Last month, Whitney called me crying. She had been caught cheating on her final exams. Someone reported her to the dean after seeing her phone during the test. She was going to lose her scholarship and probably get expelled. "I'm ruined," she sobbed into the phone. "Everything I worked for is gone. Austin won't even talk to me. His parents found out and told him I was a bad influence." I was sitting in my car outside the diner about to start my shift. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "My parents are furious. They might make me move back home." I could hear her sniffling, waiting for me to comfort her like I always did. But something in me just felt satisfied. 4 years of watching her perfect life while I struggled through every single day, and now it was falling apart. "The hearing is tomorrow," she said. "Can you come with me for support? I really need you there." I looked at my work schedule on my phone. A text from an unknown number appeared at the top of my screen. Photo attached. I opened it and my heart stopped. It was a picture of me outside the dean's office 3 weeks ago, slipping an envelope under the door. The anonymous report about Whitney's cheating. I never told anyone. Never left any trace. Or so I thought. The next text came through. "Saw you that day. Know what you did. See you at the hearing tomorrow where I'll be presenting new evidence about who really wanted Whitney expelled." The message showed as read by 5 other people. They had sent it to a group chat. I clicked on the recipient list and saw Whitney's name at the top. My hand started shaking so bad I dropped the phone. It bounced off my steering wheel and landed in the footwell. I just sat there staring at the glow of my dashboard clock. 4:47 p.m. My shift started in 13 minutes and my entire life was about to implode. I reached down with numb fingers and picked up the phone. The group chat was still open. 6 people total. Whitney, Austin, 2 names I didn't recognize, and Brooke Callahan. Brooke, Whitney's roommate from freshman year. The one who always gave me weird looks when I visited their dorm. The one who asked too many questions about how Whitney and I became friends. I should have known. I scrolled up to see if there were any other messages before the photo. Nothing. This was the opening shot. Brooke wanted Whitney to see this at the exact same moment I did. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Whitney calling. I watched her name flash on my screen 4 times before it went to voicemail. Then it started ringing again. I couldn't answer. What was I supposed to say? A knock on my window made me jump so hard I hit my head on the roof of the car. It was Dina, one of my coworkers, holding a cigarette and looking at me through the glass. "You coming in or what? Your tables are already filling up." I nodded without really seeing her. She shrugged and walked back toward the entrance. I watched her disappear through the kitchen door. The same door I'd walked through 1,000 times over the past 4 years, smelling like grease and failure while Whitney lived her perfect life. Except I was the one who ended that perfect life, and now everyone was going to know. I drove home instead of going to work. Just put the car in reverse and backed out of that parking lot without even texting my manager. First time I'd ever no-showed in 4 years. 4 years of covering other people's shifts, staying late when someone called in sick, never complaining when they scheduled me doubles on weekends. None of that mattered now. My apartment was empty when I got there. My roommate Priya worked evening shifts at the hospital, so I had the place to myself. I sat on my bed in the dark and read through the messages that had started pouring in. Whitney had sent 17 texts. The first few were confused. "Delilah, what is this? Who sent this? Why is there a picture of you?" Then they got angry. "Did you do this? Did you actually report me? Answer your phone right now." Then desperate. "Please tell me this isn't real. Please tell me Brooke is lying. You're my best friend." Then silent. The last message was just a single question mark sent 20 minutes after the others. I didn't respond to any of them. Austin texted me once. "Thought you were different." Guess not. I didn't respond to that either. Instead, I sat in the dark and tried to figure out how Brooke Callahan had been outside the dean's office at the exact moment I was sliding that envelope under the door. 3 weeks ago. A Tuesday afternoon, I checked the hallway twice before approaching the door. It was empty. I was sure it was empty. My phone rang again. Unknown number. The same one that sent the photo. I answered it. "Hey there, Delilah." A female voice, slightly amused. "Didn't expect you to pick up." "Brooke, the one and only. Listen, I just wanted to give you a heads up about tomorrow. The hearing starts at 10. I'll be presenting the photo as evidence that the anonymous report wasn't so anonymous after all." "Why are you doing this?" She laughed. You really don't remember, do you? Figures. People like you never remember the people you step on. I don't know what you're talking about. Freshman year, Whitney's birthday party. You told everyone I tried to kiss her while she was drunk. Said I was creepy and obsessed. I felt the memory surface slowly, like something rotting floating up from the bottom of a pond. Whitney's 19th birthday. Someone's off-campus apartment. Brooke following Whitney around all night, getting too close, touching her arm too much. I'd made a comment to someone. Just a stupid offhand comment. I didn't think anyone would actually believe me, I said. Well, they did. Whitney stopped talking to me after that. Moved out of our room. Told everyone I was a predator. I spent the rest of freshman year eating alone and getting dirty looks everywhere I went. Do you have any idea what that's like? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her about every Thanksgiving, watching Whitney show off her new clothes, every late night shift at the diner, every time I felt invisible while she shined. But I didn't say anything because I knew it wouldn't matter. So this is revenge, I said. This is justice, she corrected me. You ruined my college experience because of a rumor. Now I get to ruin yours with the truth. See you tomorrow, Delilah. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone until the screen went dark. Then I did something I hadn't done since I was 12 years old. I called my mom. She answered on the third ring, sounding surprised. Delilah? Everything okay? No, I said. And then I told her everything. Not just about the report or the photo or Brooke. Everything. 4 years of jealousy and resentment. Watching Whitney succeed while I barely survived. The satisfaction I felt when she called crying about being caught. The way I'd slipped that envelope under the door with shaking hands, knowing exactly what it would do to her. My mom was quiet for a long time after I finished. Why didn't you tell me you were struggling so much? Because you already have enough to worry about. Because I didn't want to be another problem. She sighed. Delilah, being jealous of someone doesn't make you a bad person. But what you did to Whitney, that was a choice. A bad one. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know. Another long pause. Then, do you want to come home? The question hit me harder than I expected. Home. Our small house with the creaky porch steps. My old bedroom with the water stain on the ceiling. Mom making coffee in the morning before her shift at the grocery store. It sounded so simple. So safe. I can't run away from this, I said. No, she agreed. You can't. But whatever happens tomorrow, you're still my daughter. That doesn't change. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed watching the ceiling fan turn in slow circles, thinking about every decision that had led me to this moment. I thought about 7th grade when Whitney moved to town and sat next to me in homeroom. She'd been wearing a Nirvana shirt even though she didn't know any of their songs. I'd thought that was funny. We'd been inseparable after that. I thought about senior year when she got that scholarship letter and screamed so loud her mom came running downstairs. I'd been standing right next to her. My own rejection letter was already in my backpack, folded into a tiny square so I wouldn't have to look at it. I thought about all the times she'd called me over the past 4 years, complaining about Austin, bragging about her classes, never once asking how I was doing, never once offering to help, like I was just an audience for her perfect life. And I thought about 3 weeks ago, walking into the administration building with that envelope, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The hallway was empty. I was sure it was empty, but Brooke had been there, watching, waiting, and now everything was about to fall apart. The hearing started at 10 a.m. in a conference room on the 3rd floor of the administration building. I got there at 9:45. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely open the door. There were about 12 people already inside. Whitney was sitting at a long table with her parents on either side of her. Her mom was holding her hand. Her dad looked like he wanted to punch someone. Whitney's eyes were red and swollen, and when she saw me walk in, her whole face changed. Not anger. Something worse. Betrayal. I looked away and found a seat in the back row. Brooke was already there, sitting near the front with a manila folder on her lap. She turned when I sat down and gave me a small wave, like we were old friends catching up. The dean came in a few minutes later, a tall woman with gray hair and a severe expression. She sat at the head of the table and shuffled through some papers. We're here to review the academic integrity case against Whitney Rennert, she said. Miss Rennert, you've been accused of using your phone to access unauthorized materials during your criminal law final exam. Whitney nodded. Her voice was barely audible when she spoke. I understand. The dean continued. An anonymous report was submitted 3 weeks ago detailing specific instances of academic dishonesty. The report included details that could only have been known by someone with intimate knowledge of Miss Rennert's study habits and exam schedule. I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't thought about that when I wrote it. I'd been so careful about the facts, so thorough in my description of exactly how Whitney had been cheating, the study guides she'd saved on her phone, the way she always asked to sit in the back corner during tests, the group chat where she shared answers with her friends. Only someone close to Whitney would know those things. And now everyone in this room was looking around, trying to figure out who? At this point, the dean said, I'd like to acknowledge that we've received additional evidence regarding the origin of this report. Miss Callahan, please present your findings. Brooke stood up with a smile that made my skin crawl. She opened her folder and pulled out an enlarged photograph, the same one she'd sent to the group chat. Me, outside the dean's office, sliding an envelope under the door. This photograph was taken 3 weeks ago, Brooke said. It shows Delilah Monroe, Whitney's longtime friend, delivering what I believe to be the anonymous report. The room went silent. Whitney's mom gasped. Her dad turned to look at me with pure hatred in his eyes. And Whitney, Whitney just stared at me, like she was seeing me for the first time. "Is this true?" the dean asked, looking directly at me. I could have lied. I could have said Brooke was making it up, that the photo was edited, that I had no idea what she was talking about. But I looked at Whitney's face and I knew it didn't matter. She already believed it. She already knew. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. Hollow. Defeated. I submitted the report. The room exploded. Whitney's mom started crying. Her dad stood up so fast his chair fell over. Someone was yelling about defamation. Someone else was calling for security. Through it all, Whitney just sat there, looking at me, not crying anymore, just empty. "Why?" she finally asked. Her voice cut through all the noise and everyone went quiet. "Why would you do this to me?" I opened my mouth to answer, to explain about 4 years of jealousy and resentment, about watching her succeed while I struggled, about every Thanksgiving and every Instagram post and every phone call where she complained about problems I would have killed to have. But the words wouldn't come, because standing there, looking at the devastation on her face, I realized something horrible. She hadn't known. All those years, she hadn't known how much I was struggling. She hadn't known because I never told her. I just smiled and nodded and pretended everything was fine while the resentment built up inside me like poison. This wasn't her fault. Not really. She was self-absorbed and oblivious. Sure. But I was the one who turned jealousy into action. I was the one who decided to destroy her life instead of just walking away from the friendship. I couldn't say any of that. So I just stood there in silence while the dean called for order and Whitney's parents demanded justice, and Brooke watched the whole thing with satisfied smile. The hearing was suspended pending investigation into my role in the report. Everyone filed out of the room in various states of shock and anger. Whitney's mom called me a monster as she walked past. Her dad shouldered into me hard enough to knock me against the wall. Whitney didn't say anything. She just walked out without looking back. I was the last one to leave. Brooke was waiting for me in the hallway. "That went well," she said. "Leave me alone." "Not yet." She fell into step beside me as I walked toward the exit. "I've been waiting 3 years for this moment. I want to enjoy it. You got what you wanted. Whitney knows it was me. What else do you need?" She laughed. "You think this is over? Oh, Delilah, this is just the beginning. That photo is already making the rounds. By tomorrow, everyone on campus will know what you did. And unlike the rumor you spread about me, this one is actually true." I stopped walking. "What's that supposed to mean?" She leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It means your reputation is about to get the same treatment mine did. Welcome to my freshman year." She walked away, heels clicking on the marble floor. I stood there watching her go, feeling the weight of everything I'd done pressing down on my chest like a physical thing. The next few days were a blur. The photo went viral, not just on campus but everywhere. Someone posted it to a Reddit thread about college drama, and it got picked up by those Instagram accounts that share screenshots of tweets and text messages. Within 48 hours, I was the villain in a story that had been stripped of all context. Girl sabotages best friend's college career over jealousy. Woman reports friend for cheating to get revenge for having better life. The comments were brutal. Thousands of strangers calling me pathetic, evil, mentally ill. They made up theories about why I did it. Some said I was in love with Austin. Others said I was a sociopath who'd been planning this for years. Nobody talked about the 4 years I'd spent working double shifts while Whitney partied. Nobody mentioned the way she'd flaunted her perfect life, while I struggled to buy textbooks. To them, I was just a jealous monster who destroyed an innocent girl's future. Whitney's family got a lawyer. They were talking about suing me for defamation, even though everything in my report was true. Her dad gave an interview to a local news station where he called me a predator who'd befriended his daughter just to tear her down. The university opened an investigation into my conduct. I had to meet with a panel of administrators who asked questions about my mental state and my relationship with Whitney. They wanted to know if I'd planned this from the beginning, if I'd always intended to hurt her. I tried to explain, tried to tell them about the years of resentment and the way it had built up until I couldn't contain it anymore. They nodded and took notes and looked at me like I was something they'd found on the bottom of their shoe. Through all of this, Priya was the only person who stuck by me. She'd come home from her hospital shifts and find me sitting in the dark, staring at my phone, and she'd make me eat something even when I said I wasn't hungry. "This is really bad," she said one night. "Like career-ruining bad. You know that, right?" "I know. What are you going to do?" "I don't know." She sat down next to me on the couch. "Can I ask you something? And you have to promise to tell me the truth." "Okay. Did Whitney actually cheat? Like, was the report accurate?" "Yes," I said. "Everything I wrote was true. I saw her do it multiple times. The group chat, the phone during tests, all of it." Priya nodded slowly. "Then why didn't you just report it the normal way? Like, go to the professor or something? Why the anonymous letter?" I thought about it for a long time before answering. "Because I didn't want to help her," I finally said. "I wanted to hurt her. There's a difference." Priya didn't say anything. She just put her hand on my shoulder and squeezed. A week after the hearing, I got a letter from the university. They'd completed their investigation into the origin of the anonymous report. Based on my admission during the hearing and the photographic evidence, they determined that I had violated university policy regarding harassment and intimidation. I was being expelled. The letter was very formal, very official. It talked about the importance of academic integrity and community standards and responsible conduct. It gave me 14 days to appeal the decision. I didn't appeal. Instead, I packed up my apartment, loaded everything into my car, and drove home. 237 miles of highway between my failed attempt at a future and the small house where I grew up. My mom was waiting on the porch when I pulled into the driveway. She didn't say anything, just held the door open while I carried my boxes inside. "Your old room is ready," she said. I put fresh sheets on the bed. "Thanks." She helped me unpack, finding places for all the accumulated debris of my college life, textbooks I'd never use again, a coffee maker from the thrift store, photos of me and Whitney from high school, which I threw in the trash without looking at them. That night, we sat at the kitchen table eating takeout Chinese, and she asked me what I was going to do next. "I don't know," I said. "I don't really have a lot of options right now." She nodded. "Your cousin Maribel said they're hiring at the distribution center where she works. It's not glamorous, but it's a paycheck. The distribution center. Packing boxes for 10 hours a day. A far cry from the business degree I'd been working toward." "Okay," I said. "I'll call her tomorrow." My mom reached across the table and took my hand. "You made a mistake, Delilah. A big one. But you're not the first person to let jealousy get the better of them. And you won't be the last. What matters now is what you do next." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one whose face was all over the internet. She wasn't the one getting death threats in her DMs from strangers who decided I was everything wrong with the world. But she was right about one thing. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit in my childhood bedroom forever, hiding from the consequences of my own choices. I started working at the distribution center 2 weeks later. $8 an hour, 12-hour shifts, standing in the same spot, scanning barcodes and packing boxes until my feet went numb. It was mind-numbing work, the kind that gave you too much time to think. Maribel was nice about everything. She didn't ask questions about why I'd suddenly shown up back home in the middle of the semester. She just showed me where to put my lunch in the break room fridge and taught me how to hit my quota without destroying my back. The other workers were less charitable. A few of them had seen the viral posts, and word spread fast. Within a week, everyone knew I was the jealous friend from the internet. Some of them avoided me entirely. Others made snide comments when they thought I couldn't hear. "She looks normal," one woman said to her friend as I walked past. You'd never know she was crazy enough to destroy someone's life like that. I pretended I didn't hear. Just kept scanning barcodes, packing boxes, watching the clock tick toward the end of my shift. The thing about hitting rock bottom is that time moves differently down there. Days blur into weeks. Weeks blur into months. Before I knew it, 6 months had passed since the hearing, and I was still standing in the same spot, scanning the same barcodes, going home to the same empty bedroom. I stopped checking social media after the second month. There was no point. The story had died down, replaced by newer scandals and fresher outrage. But every so often, someone would dig it up again, share it with a new caption, and my notifications would explode with fresh hatred from strangers who'd just discovered what I'd done. Whitney graduated that spring. Someone sent me a link to her Instagram post, a smiling photo of her in cap and gown with Austin's arm around her shoulders. The caption said something about resilience and overcoming obstacles. Over 3,000 likes. I found out later that the university had reversed their decision to expel her. Some combination of her parents' lawyers and good behavior and probably money had convinced them to let her finish her degree. The cheating allegations were quietly dropped, swept under the rug in favor of a more palatable narrative about a jealous former friend trying to sabotage an innocent student. She came out of the whole thing looking like a victim, and I was the monster who'd tried to destroy her. A year after the hearing, I got a message from an unknown number, different from Brooks. I checked. It was short, just 2 sentences. "I hope you're doing okay. I'm sorry for how everything happened." No name, no context. But I knew who it was from. I stared at that message for 3 days before I finally responded. "I'm alive, working at a warehouse. You?" The response came a few hours later. "Law school. First year. It's hard but good." Of course she was in law school. Of course she'd managed to bounce back from everything and land on her feet. That was Whitney. Always landing on her feet while the rest of us scraped our knees. "I'm glad," I typed back. And I meant it. Somewhere along the way, the jealousy had burned itself out. There was nothing left but ash. "Can we talk?" she asked. Like, actually talk? There's stuff I need to say. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no, wanted to leave the whole thing buried and move on with my life. But another part, the part that still remembered 7th grade and Nirvana shirts and being inseparable, wanted to hear what she had to say. "Okay," I wrote. "When?" We met at a coffee shop halfway between my mom's house and the city where she was going to school. A 2-hour drive for both of us. Neutral territory. I got there first and sat in a corner booth, watching the door. When Whitney walked in, I barely recognized her. She'd cut her hair short and she was thinner than I remembered. The confident strut I remembered from college was gone, replaced by something more hesitant. She saw me and stopped. We just looked at each other for a long moment. "Hey," she finally said. "Hey." She slid into the booth across from me. Neither of us ordered anything. The silence stretched between us like a living thing. "I don't know where to start," she said. "Then don't," I said. "I can go first. I'm sorry. For everything. The report, the betrayal, all of it. I was jealous and resentful, and instead of talking to you about it, I tried to destroy your life. That was wrong." She nodded slowly. "I know you're sorry. I've known that for a while. But Delilah, I need to tell you something." "What?" She took a deep breath. "I was cheating. Everything in your report was true. The phone, the group chat, all of it. I cheated my way through half of college because I was terrified of failing. I didn't say anything, just waited for her to continue. When I got that scholarship, she said, I was so scared. Everyone had these expectations of me. My parents, my teachers, Austin's family. They all thought I was this brilliant academic star, and I didn't want to let them down. So when things got hard, I took shortcuts. I told myself it was just temporary, that I'd stop once I got my footing, but I never did. She looked down at her hands. And then you reported me, and I was so angry. Not because you were wrong, but because you were right. I'd been lying to everyone, including myself, and you exposed the truth. I hated you for that. But it was the truth, I said. I know. She looked up at me. That's what I needed to tell you. What you did was messed up. The anonymous report, the sneaking around, the betrayal, all of that was wrong. But I was also wrong. I was cheating. And I was using you as an emotional dumping ground for years without ever asking how you were doing. I was a terrible friend. I felt something shift in my chest. Something that had been wound tight for years finally starting to loosen. I should have just talked to you, I said. Told you how I was feeling instead of letting it build up, and I should have paid attention. She shook her head. All those phone calls where I complained about Austin or my roommates, and I never once asked about your life. I was so wrapped up in myself I didn't even notice you were struggling. We sat in silence for a while. The coffee shop hummed around us, full of people living their own complicated lives. So, what now? I asked. She shrugged. I don't know. I'm not saying we can be friends again. I don't know if that's possible. But I needed you to know that I don't hate you anymore, and I hope you don't hate me. I don't, I said, and I meant it. The hatred had burned out a long time ago. All that was left was a kind of tired sadness for everything we'd lost. We talked for another hour after that, about her law school classes and my job at the warehouse, about her relationship with Austin, which had survived everything, about my mom and the small house I'd moved back into. It wasn't like old times. It couldn't be, but it was something. When we finally got up to leave, she hugged me. It was awkward and brief, but it was real. Take care of yourself, she said. You too. I watched her walk to her car and drive away. Then I got in my own car and made the 2-hour drive back home. That night, I sat on the porch with my mom, watching the sun set over the trees. How did it go? She asked. Okay, I said. I think we both said what we needed to say. Does that help? I thought about it. Yeah, I said. I think it does. She nodded and didn't ask any more questions. That was the thing about my mom. She always knew when to push and when to let things be. I kept working at the distribution center. 6 months turned into a year. A year turned into 2. I got promoted to shift supervisor, then to floor manager. The pay wasn't great, but it was stable. I moved out of my mom's house and into a small apartment on the other side of town. The internet forgot about me eventually. New scandals, new villains, new reasons to be outraged. My face stopped showing up in search results. The death threats stopped coming. It was like the whole thing had never happened, except it had. And I carried that with me every day. Not as a wound anymore, but as a scar. A reminder of what jealousy could do when you let it fester instead of facing it. I started going to therapy around the 2-year mark. A woman named Dr. Rosen, who had an office above a dry cleaner and a way of asking questions that made me see things I'd been avoiding for years. You've been punishing yourself for a long time, she said during one session. Do you think you've suffered enough? I don't know, I said. How do you measure something like that? You don't, she said. That's the point. Suffering isn't a currency you can spend to buy forgiveness. At some point, you have to just decide to move forward. It took me another year to really understand what she meant, but eventually, I did. I enrolled in online classes, finished my degree at 28, started applying for jobs that actually used my brain, got hired at a logistics company as a junior analyst. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. I made new friends, people who didn't know anything about what I'd done, who just knew me as Delilah from work, who was kind of quiet but always remembered birthdays. I dated a guy named Thatcher for a while. It didn't work out, but it wasn't a disaster either, just 2 people who wanted different things. Whitney and I never became friends again, but we kept in touch. A text on birthdays, a comment on the occasional Instagram post, enough to acknowledge that we'd both survived, that we'd both moved on. She married Austin the summer I turned 30. I saw the photos online. She looked happy, really happy. And for the first time, I felt genuinely glad for her. No jealousy, no resentment, just a simple hope that she'd found what she was looking for. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive myself for what I did. Some mistakes are too big to just forget, but I've learned to live with it, to accept that I'm a person who did a terrible thing, and also a person who can do better. Last week, I got a promotion at work, senior analyst with my own team. My boss pulled me aside after the announcement and said she'd been impressed with how I handled adversity, how I'd rebuilt myself from the ground up. I didn't tell her the whole story, but I thanked her and went back to my desk and did the job I'd worked so hard to earn. That night, I drove past the old diner where I used to work. It's a sandwich shop now. Different name, different owners. Same greasy parking lot where I used to sit in my car studying between shifts. I pulled in and sat there for a minute, remembering. The exhaustion, the jealousy, the slow burn of resentment that eventually consumed everything. Then I put the car in drive and went home to my apartment, made dinner, watched something mindless on TV, went to bed early because I had an early meeting. A normal life, nothing special, nothing perfect, but it's mine, and I built it myself. That's the thing about rock bottom. You can stay there forever, drowning in your mistakes. Or you can start climbing. It took me a long time to start climbing, but I did. And now, looking back from wherever I am now, I can finally see the whole picture. Whitney wasn't the villain. Neither was Brooke, and neither was I. We were just people, flawed, complicated, capable of both terrible cruelty and unexpected grace. We hurt each other because we were hurting. We made mistakes because we were human. I'm not proud of what I did. I'll never be proud of it. But I'm not ashamed anymore either. I did a terrible thing. I faced the consequences, and I chose to become someone better. That's all any of us can do, really. Learn from our worst moments. Try to do better tomorrow. And maybe, if we're lucky, find a way to forgive ourselves along the way. Update 1. It's been 3 months since I last posted, and a lot has happened. Some good, some complicated, and some that I'm still trying to process. First, the good news. My promotion at work has been going well. Managing a team is harder than I expected, but I've found that I'm actually decent at it. Who knew that years of watching terrible managers at the distribution center would teach me exactly what not to do? My therapist says I have a natural empathy for people who are struggling. I think that's just a fancy way of saying I know what it's like to hit bottom and I don't want anyone else to feel that alone. But the real reason I'm writing this update is because of what happened 2 weeks ago. I was sitting at my desk, eating lunch at my computer like I always do, when my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. Hey, it's Brooke. We need to talk. Can you meet me? I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes before responding. Brooke Callahan? The woman who'd exposed me? Who'd orchestrated my downfall with a single photograph and a well-timed group chat? The last person I'd ever expected to hear from again? What do you want? Her response came immediately. I need to apologize. In person. Please. I almost said no. Every instinct told me this was a trap. Some new scheme to humiliate me years after the fact. But something stopped me. Call it curiosity. Call it the therapy working. Call it whatever you want. Fine, I wrote back. When and where? We met at a park near my apartment. Neutral ground. I got there early and sat on a bench, watching families walk their dogs and kids play on the swings. Normal life happening all around me, while I waited for the woman who'd destroyed mine. She showed up 10 minutes late, looking nothing like I remembered. The sleek confidence was gone. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie that seemed to swallow her whole. She sat down on the opposite end of the bench without saying anything. Thanks for meeting me, she finally said. You said you wanted to apologize. So, apologize. She flinched at the coldness in my voice. I didn't care. This woman had spent 3 years planning my downfall. She didn't get to show up looking pathetic and expect sympathy. I deserved that, she said. I deserve worse than that. What I did to you was wrong. I told myself it was justice, that I was just giving you what you gave me, but that was a lie. I was angry and petty and I wanted to watch you suffer. Why are you telling me this now? She was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm in recovery. Step 9. Making amends. Recovery? For what? Pills? She said. Started senior year of college. By the time I graduated, I was taking whatever I could get my hands on just to feel normal. It got bad. Really bad. I lost my job, my apartment, most of my friends. 6 months ago, I checked myself into rehab. I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the Brooke I remembered, the one who'd smiled while watching my life fall apart. This was someone broken, someone trying to put herself back together. I'm sorry, I said. And I meant it, even if I wasn't sure I should. Don't be. She shook her head. I did this to myself, just like I did that thing to you. I spent so many years blaming everyone else for my problems. You, for that rumor in freshman year. Whitney, for believing it. The world, for not giving me what I thought I deserved. But the truth is, I made choices, bad ones, and I have to own that. Why did you really do it? I asked. Target me like that. Keep that photo for 3 weeks before using it. She laughed, but there was no humor in it, because I saw an opportunity. I'd been watching you and Whitney for years, waiting for cracks in your friendship. When I saw you at the dean's office, I knew exactly what you were doing, and I knew that if I played it right, I could take you both down. But you didn't take Whitney down. Just me. Yeah. She looked at her hands. She had lawyers, money, parents, who knew how to work the system. You had nothing. It was easier to make you the villain. I sat with that for a minute. The unfairness of it, the randomness. I'd done something terrible, yes, but so had Whitney, and Brooke had done something terrible too. We were all guilty, but I was the only one who'd really paid the price. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said. I'm not asking you to. She stood up. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry, that I see what I did now, and that I hope your life is better than mine turned out to be. She started to walk away, then stopped. For what it's worth, she said over her shoulder, you handled it better than I would have. The consequences, I mean. You didn't run, you didn't make excuses, you just took it and kept going. I don't think I could have done that. Then she was gone, disappearing down the path toward the parking lot. I sat on that bench for another hour, thinking about everything she'd said, about choices and consequences and the strange way life has of circling back on itself. Brooke had tried to destroy me, and in some ways, she'd succeeded, but she'd also destroyed herself in the process. All that anger and resentment she'd carried for years had eaten her alive from the inside out. I recognized that feeling. I'd carried my own version of it for a long time. The jealousy toward Whitney, the bitterness about my circumstances, the conviction that the world owed me something better than what I'd gotten. It had nearly consumed me. Would have, if I'd let it. But I didn't. I faced the consequences. I rebuilt. I chose to become someone different. And now, sitting on that bench, I realized something important. I wasn't the same person who'd slipped that envelope under the dean's door. I wasn't the jealous, resentful woman who'd wanted to watch her best friend's life fall apart. I was someone else now. Someone who'd earned every good thing in her life through hard work and honest effort. Someone who could sit across from the woman who destroyed her and feel something other than hatred. Not forgiveness. Exactly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something close to understanding. I went home that night and called my mom. Told her about the conversation with Brooke. She listened without interrupting, the way she always did. "What do you think it means?" she asked when I finished. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe nothing. Maybe just that people can change. Even people who do terrible things. Including you?" I thought about it. "Yeah," I said. "Including me." The next few weeks were quiet. I threw myself into work, into my team, into building something positive. The conversation with Brooke had unsettled something in me, opened up questions I thought were settled. Was I really past it? Had I really forgiven myself? Or was I just going through the motions, pretending to be healed while the wound still festered underneath? I talked to Dr. Rosen about it during our next session. "Healing isn't linear," she said. "Some days you'll feel completely recovered. Other days the old feelings will come rushing back. That's normal. So what do? You keep going," she said. "You acknowledge the feelings when they come. You don't let them control your actions. And you remember that the person you were isn't the person you have to be." Easy to say, harder to do, but I was trying. And then 3 days ago, something happened that changed everything. I was at a work conference in the city, one of those networking events where everyone stands around with drinks and tries to exchange business cards. I hate those things, but my boss had insisted. I was near the bar, waiting for the bartender to pour my soda, when I heard a voice behind me. "Delilah?" I turned around, and there was Whitney. She looked good, professional, polished, wearing a tailored blazer and heels that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But there was something else in her face. Surprise, yes, but also something that looked almost like fear. "Whitney." I didn't know what else to say. "What are you doing here?" "I'm with Hartman and Associates now." She gestured vaguely toward a group of people across the room. "They're one of the sponsors. Hartman and Associates. The biggest law firm in the state." Of course she'd landed there. Of course she'd found her way to the top despite everything. "That's great," I said. "Congratulations." "Thanks." She fidgeted with her drink. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, me neither." We stood there in awkward silence. Around us, the conference buzzed with conversation and laughter. Normal people having normal interactions. Not two former best friends with a decade of complicated history between them. "You look good," she finally said. "Healthy." "Thanks. I've been working on it." Another pause. She glanced over her shoulder at her colleagues, then back at me. "Listen," she said. "I know this is weird, but would you want to grab coffee sometime? Not now, obviously, but maybe next week?" I studied her face, looking for the catch, the angle, the trap, but all I saw was the same girl who'd sat next to me in 7th grade, wearing a Nirvana shirt and trying too hard to be cool. "Sure," I said. "I'd like that." We exchanged numbers. Actual numbers this time. Not the tentative birthday texts we'd been exchanging for years. She squeezed my arm before walking back to her group. I watched her go, feeling something complicated twist in my chest. I don't know what this means. If it means anything at all. Maybe we'll have coffee and realize we have nothing left in common. Maybe we'll become friends again. Maybe something in between. But for the first time in years, I'm not dreading finding out. I'm not bracing for another betrayal or another scheme. I'm just curious. Life is strange that way. The people who hurt you most can also be the people who help you grow. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get a chance to start over. Not from the beginning. You can never go back to the beginning. But from wherever you are now, that's where I am. Wherever this is. Moving forward, one day at a time. I'll update again when there's more to tell. Update 2. Okay, so I need to talk about what happened with Whitney. We had that coffee meeting 3 weeks ago. Sat in a quiet corner of a cafe near her office, both of us clutching our drinks like shields. The conversation was stilted at first. Surface-level stuff about work and weather and the new construction downtown. Then she said something that knocked the wind out of me. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Something I should have told you years ago." I waited. "Austin and I are getting divorced." I blinked. "What?" "He's been having an affair. With one of my colleagues. I found out 2 months ago." "Whitney, I'm so sorry." She shook her head. "That's not the part I need to tell you. The part I need to tell you is that when I found out, my first thought wasn't about Austin. It was about you." "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "I thought about how it felt when you betrayed me. When I found out you'd reported me. And I realized something. What Austin did hurt. But what you did, that almost broke me." I didn't know what to say. Just sat there holding my coffee while she continued. "I know what you did was wrong," she said. "I know you were jealous and resentful and you acted on those feelings in the worst possible way. But you were also my best friend. For 10 years. And when you turned on me, I lost more than just my scholarship. I lost my ability to trust anyone. Whitney, let me finish. She held up a hand. For years, I've been walking around with this wall up, never letting anyone get too close, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I thought I was protecting myself, but I was just isolating myself. And now my marriage is ending and I realized I don't have anyone. No real friends. No one I can actually talk to. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. So I guess what I'm asking is, can we try again? Not like before. I know we can't go back to that, but something new, something honest. I sat with her words for a long time before responding. I want that, I finally said. But I need you to understand something too. What I did was terrible. I own that completely. But it didn't happen in a vacuum. For years, you treated me like an audience for your life, never asking how I was doing, never offering to help when I was struggling. I'm not saying that justifies what I did. Nothing justifies it. But if we're going to try again, we have to be honest about all of it. She nodded slowly. You're right. I was a terrible friend. I was so wrapped up in my own life that I didn't see what was happening to you. And when you called me out, I just shut down instead of actually listening. We talked for another 2 hours after that. Really talked. About all of it. The jealousy and the resentment and the betrayal and the aftermath. We cried. We laughed at how ridiculous the whole thing had become. We made fun of our younger selves for being so dramatic. By the end of it, something had shifted between us. Not back to what we were. That was gone forever. But forward. To something that felt more real. More honest. We've been meeting every week since then. Coffee on Saturdays. Sometimes we talk about heavy stuff. Unpacking the years of hurt and misunderstanding. Sometimes we just talk about nothing. The way old friends do. It's weird. After everything that happened, I never expected Whitney to be back in my life. But here she is. Different than before. Humbler. More aware of her own flaws. Maybe that's what it takes. Maybe you have to lose everything before you can see what really matters. Or maybe I'm just getting sentimental in my old age. Either way, I'm glad she reached out. I'm glad I said yes. And I'm glad we're both trying, even though neither of us knows where this is going. That's the thing about second chances. They don't come with guarantees. You just have to take them and hope for the best. Update 3, final. This is going to be my last update. Not because anything bad happened, but because I think the story is finally finished. It's been 8 months since Whitney and I reconnected. 8 months of coffee dates and long conversations and slowly rebuilding something that I thought was gone forever. Last week, she called me crying. The divorce was finalized. She was sitting alone in her empty apartment, surrounded by boxes, feeling like her whole life had fallen apart. I drove over without even thinking about it. Sat with her on the floor of her living room while she sobbed into my shoulder, made her tea, helped her unpack the essentials so she didn't have to sleep on the floor. At some point, she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and said, I don't deserve this. After everything that happened, I don't deserve you being here. I thought about all the years of resentment, the jealousy that had eaten me alive, the terrible thing I'd done and the terrible price I'd paid. Maybe not, I said, but you're my friend. And this is what friends do. She started crying again. But this time, I think it was relief. The thing about this whole story is that I went into it thinking I was the victim. Whitney had the perfect life while I struggled. She had everything handed to her while I scraped and fought for every scrap. When I finally snapped and reported her, I told myself it was justice, that she deserved it. But that was a lie I told myself, so I didn't have to face the truth. The truth is that I was jealous. Deeply, poisonously jealous. And instead of dealing with those feelings in a healthy way, I let them fester until they turned into something ugly. I hurt someone who'd been my friend since 7th grade. I tried to destroy her life because I couldn't handle watching her succeed. That's not justice. That's just cruelty dressed up in better clothes. The consequences I faced were proportional to what I did, maybe even less than I deserved. I lost my scholarship, my reputation, my future. But I didn't lose my family. I didn't lose my chance to rebuild. I didn't lose the ability to become someone better. Whitney, for all her flaws, didn't deserve what I did to her. The cheating was her mistake to face, and she should have faced it. But not like that. Not through betrayal by her closest friend. We're both still figuring out what our friendship looks like now. It's not what it was. It can't be. There's too much history, too many scars. But it's something honest. Something built on mutual understanding instead of one-sided resentment. I had dinner with my mom last night. Told her about everything. Whitney, the divorce, the friendship we're building from the wreckage of the one I destroyed. She listened, the way she always does. Then she said something that stuck with me. You know what the hardest thing in life is? It's not success or failure. It's not love or loss. It's learning to live with yourself after you've done something you can't take back. Most people never figure out how to do that. They spend their whole lives running from their mistakes. You stopped running. That takes more courage than anything else.